Welcome back, everybody, for your second session of Food Smarts cooking class. I hope you guys felt comfortable in the kitchen last time. We talked a little bit about our kitchen safety and using safe knife skills, so hopefully that's feeling comfortable and you're feeling confident and safe in your classroom or at home. Today, we are going to add a kitchen skill. We're going to talk about how to read a recipe and make sure we have everything we need and know where we're going with our recipe. And we're also going to talk about options that we have when we're selecting ingredients or recipes to make for ourselves. So part of being a good chef is knowing what food is doing in our bodies and what are going to be good options to fuel us, and then we can make the recipe. So we're going to talk a little bit about the options that we have today. All right, so a lot of you guys maybe have seen this. You maybe have seen it from me in a class. Maybe you've seen it in the cafeteria. Maybe you've seen it at the nurse's office. This is called My Plate. And My Plate has 5 food groups: fruit, vegetables, grains, dairy, and protein. And we really want to be eating from all those 5 food groups every single day. So My Plate is a really good thing to keep in your brain to make sure you're getting a variety of foods. And why do we want a variety? Well, because let's think about this. Broccoli is a pretty healthy food. We know that broccoli is good for us. We know it does good things for our body. It's really has lots of good nutrients, which we'll talk about later. But what if you ate broccoli every single day, 3 times a day for a year? How would you feel? Probably pretty funky, right? So even though broccoli has a lot of good stuff in it, a lot of other foods have different things in them that are also really important for our body. So if we only eat one food, even if it's a really good option, we're going to miss out on things. So we want to eat from all 5 food groups every day. And even within those food groups, we want a lot of variety. So if we think about our fruits and vegetables food groups, we could think about getting variety of colors. We could think about getting a variety of plant parts. So we could think about eating from the root and the stem and the leaves and the flower and the fruit, right? So lots of ways to get variety in those food groups. When we think about protein, think about all the protein choices we have, right? We've got fish, beans, eggs, bacon, hamburger, chicken, nuts, seeds, almonds, all sorts of protein choices. So we want to get a variety of protein. And what about grains? So lots of different grains we have, right? We have things that maybe are in our pantry, like dried rice that we could cook. Maybe we have something that's already made into something, like bread or tortillas or crackers, right? Lots of different grain options. Maybe we eat oatmeal for breakfast, or maybe we have granola, right? Lots of different options. And when we think about grains, we want to be getting whole grains. So things that in the ingredients of the label say the word whole. We like whole grains. They do a lot of really good stuff for our stomachs and for our digestive system. And the last food group, dairy. So there's lots of different dairies we could eat. There's cheese, there's yogurt, there's milk. And if you're someone who can't have dairy, like from cow's milk, that's okay too. There's lots of other options like almond milk. They all do really good things for our body. So getting a variety of foods from all the food groups is really important for making sure our body feels its best and our skin feels good and our bellies feel good and our brains are healthy and we can keep growing and learning like we should be, right? So 5 food groups a day, and you could get that across the day, right? And think about some of the meals maybe you have for lunch. They don't really, you can't pull them apart and put them into all the food groups, right? Sometimes it's more of a complex meal. That's okay. Think about all the different pieces of a recipe and of a meal that you have in front of you. And they might all go into different food groups as you're creating your meal. So if we think about pizza, maybe the crust is a grain, maybe the sauce is a fruit or vegetable, maybe there's some fruit or vegetable toppings, and then we've got some dairy too, and probably some protein depending on what kind of pizza you like. But the most important thing is to eat from all 5 food groups every single day to help your body grow and keep learning and feel your best. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about how to read a recipe. There are a lot of things we can make in the kitchen that we don't really need a recipe for, or maybe it all just comes from our brain, we can remember it. But sometimes we want to follow a recipe if we're learning something new or if it's a really complicated food, right? So when we get a recipe, there's lots of different pieces to it, and they're all really important for making the recipe make the thing you want to make. So the first thing we'll see is a title, right? So we can see what we're actually going to make with this recipe. Most recipes then have something that tells you the prep time or the cook time or the total time. So that gives you an idea of like, do I actually have time to make this thing, or do I only have 20 minutes and this is going to take me an hour, right? So that can be important for helping to choose which recipe you use. Then also right under the title, there's usually something that says yield or makes X number of servings. So in your recipe in the book on page 13, there's an example and it says it yields 2 servings. So that means if you make the recipe just like this with all these ingredients, then you're going to make enough of this smoothie for 2 people. Now, what if you wanted to make the smoothie for 4 people? What if you had some friends over? Yeah, so we're going to have to do some math sometimes to either increase the amount of food we're making, or we could divide and decrease it. If we only wanted to make 1 cup of smoothie, we could divide everything by 2, right? We could divide it in half. So instead of making 2 servings, it makes 1. So there's lots of ways we can change our recipes, and that's one of them. So we've got our title, we've got our prep time and our cook time and our servings. Then there are our ingredients, right? The ingredients list is really important because if we don't have something, we need to make sure that we have a substitution. So this ingredients list has enough stuff to make a smoothie, but if you don't have any strawberries, do you think it's okay if you got some blueberries? Yeah, exactly. So we can trade things in, but we want to make sure we have most of the ingredients or something to use instead. So we look through our ingredients, we gather our ingredients. And then there's also directions or instructions. So the directions tell you what to do with the ingredients. Maybe you chop them, maybe you mix them, maybe you blend them, maybe you cook them. It tells you step by step, and you want to follow the directions in order, right? So you want to do the first one first and then do the second one. We don't want to skip around because then we might end up cooking the cake before we've added all the ingredients, right? And then sometimes there's nutrition information, might tell you like how many calories or what sort of nutrients are in this recipe. That doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. And sometimes there's notes. They might say, this is a good substitution if you want to try this, or if you don't have an oven, try it this way. So maybe some notes about how to do things differently if you need. So we want to always gather all of our ingredients, and we want to read through the entire recipe before we start cooking, because what if we are baking a cake and we get halfway through mixing all our ingredients together and we realize we don't have any flour, right? It's a pretty important ingredient for cake. So we want to get all of our ingredients ahead of time, and we want to read through the whole recipe. It's like a map that tells you where you're going to go, and make sure we understand each step before we start. So when you guys make your recipe today, I want you to try to find all of those elements of a recipe, and I want you to read through them all together and make sure you understand what you're going to do and gather your ingredients. And if you have questions about what you're going to do, you can ask them ahead of time, right? Awesome. Good luck. All right, everybody. So just about time to do your activities in class. A couple optional activities for y'all today, depending on how much time you have. On page 19 is a food group bingo games. You also have My Family's Rainbow of Foods and Eat the Rainbow on pages 26 and 27. So that's kind of brainstorming. What does your family already like to eat? What colors are those foods? What parts of the plants are they? And then you can learn a little bit about what the different color fruits and vegetables do for your body. So for example, a lot of us know that carrots are really good for our eyes. We've probably heard that before. And a lot of orange foods actually are good for your eyes because they have a lot of vitamin A. It's one of the things that helps our eyes be healthy. So you can learn a little bit more about what the other colors do for our body on page 27, and then fill in on page 26. And today when you do your kitchen time, when you make your recipe, make sure to find all the parts of that recipe. If there's anything that needs to be done ahead of time, like if a recipe calls for chopped bananas, you want to chop the bananas ahead of time. So keep an eye out for things that need to happen before, and think about things you might change about the recipes. Recipes are meant to be changed for our preferences so that we can enjoy our food. So think about things you could change for yourself. Remember those safe knife skills, and remember our kitchen safety. We're starting to put it all together. Have fun today, and I'll see you next time.